after his stop here, and that airport and that runway in Delaware could not accommodate this size plane, but Hancock Airport, one of the longest runways in the country for sure, so it can handle just about anything. And there's the familiar white and blue Boeing 747 double-decker there of Air Force One, carrying the president on board as he is about to head towards the most in downtown Syracuse to make his address announcing that Micron is getting $6.1 billion in federal funding to help with its expansion here. Most of it going to the Syracuse project, or the one in the town of Clay, I should say more specifically, but some will be used for the expansion in Boise, Idaho. I can tell you, if you were with us at noontime, having covered many presidents and many aspects of presidents' visits, I can tell you that when I was at Fort Drum, when President Obama was in the White House, Air Force One and that giant Boeing 747 came and landed on the airfield up there on the Army base. And once you see it in the distance on the horizon, impressive. When it gets on the ground and then starts to taxi and eventually parks profile style on the tarmac there, I will tell you, it is about as impressive as you could imagine seeing. News Channel 9's Rachel Polanski, News Channel 9's Andrew Donovan are out there right now. Let's see if we can pick up Rachel and Andrew right now. Guys, I know the plane just got on the ground. Can you see it as it's starting to taxi towards you right now? And who may you see on the tarmac waiting for him?
Well, yeah, Jeff, we see Onondaga County Executive Ryan McMahon here to greet the President of the United States. You might remember Syracuse Mayor Ben Walsh had that honor last time, but right now the mayor is out of town on family time, so he is not here. So the county executive, who's had so much to do with the Micron project, is here, ready to greet the President of the United States. Air Force One is out of sight right now as it slows down and gets closer to where the president can get out of the plane. I actually have to go right now so I can also cover the motorcade, hop in there with them. So, Rachel, I'm going to let you continue our coverage.
I'll take over. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, Andrew's got to go so he can be riding in the motorcade. But, yeah, we just watched Air Force One touchdown, and now it is out of sight as it continues on the runway. We're just showing you a live picture of what we're seeing here.
Rachel, is there much of a crowd there? I know Andrew just said that Ryan McMahon is there. Is there much of a crowd? I don't know how much of the public they are allowing there. What do you see as far as people right now?
Right, sure. It is not much of a crowd. It is pretty small. We have our press pool here with just about 10 of us here. And like Andrew said, the county executive is here. We also have others in some military personnel here as well, but relatively a small crowd that we're seeing here, Jeff.
Now you can start to see Air Force One. Hard to miss it, I will tell you.
Oh, there we go.
It is the biggest plane in the world, as you can possibly imagine. Well fortified. It is now starting to taxi over to the tarmac there. Pretty much on time. You can imagine they are able to clear airspace and clear the runways to get them there on time. He was supposed to touch down at about 12:40, maybe a few minutes early there, but no worries. I know that the motorcade that Andrew will be jumping in and being a part of, the motorcade vehicles arrived yesterday in Syracuse at Hancock Airport, so they were all there and ready. And again, having covered many aspects of presidents' visits, I've covered President Clinton, George Bush, Barack Obama, President Trump. I have covered Joe Biden as vice president, as he had visited here a couple of times. He gave the address at the law school there. Those motorcades are almost equally as impressive. They are long. There are many vehicles. There are well-equipped members of the military, obviously, and the Secret Service there to protect the president on every visit that he makes. Again, there you see the Boeing 747 rolling into Syracuse's airport there, as we have seen before. very impressive to see as we await it. We know that motorcade from Hancock Field will eventually make its way down to the most in downtown Syracuse. Not many other details are given as far as exactly what particular route he will take to get down there, or if he may do anything in between his stop here. It is a very, very tight schedule for him today. He is on the ground right now, and we know he is already scheduled to leave Syracuse later this afternoon. Really only supposed to be on the ground here for a couple of hours. Ryan Dean is live for us inside the most, where the president will be heading momentarily. Ryan, does anybody inside have any indication yet that Air Force One is actually on the ground?
No, I don't believe they do. There's been no announcements, obviously, but if folks are following along on their phone, maybe. But the folks that have been here, the invited guests, we've seen a lot of, city leaders, county leaders, different community leaders. We also saw some leaders of local school districts here in the building. I would say maybe about 100 or so guests here waiting for the president. He's not scheduled to give his remarks until 2 o'clock. There's probably going to be some other folks taken to the podium beforehand, but no, it's not like they're following closely the arrival of the president. But quite the transformation, though, Jeff, inside this room. This is the open play room, if you're familiar with the most. I've brought my kids here many, many times. It's near the dinosaur exhibit, and now it is shut down with security, different levels of security to try to make it inside, and it has been transformed. The podium is behind me. You have a sign that says Syracuse, New York, President Joe Biden investing in America. And then you have just, I would say, dozens and dozens of members of press here to cover the president arriving here for the second time in about 18 months here in Syracuse to talk about Micron. Obviously, the first time around, Jeff, was announcing that Micron is coming to Clay. And this time around, it's about the payoff. It's about the money that's coming with it, because they've been talking for so long that you need to have this federal funding for this project to go forward. And now we know $6.1 billion will be coming to Micron. Some of that will be going to Boise. Some of that will be coming here to Clay. And then an additional $7 billion in loans available for Micron. And then you have also the private investment as well. So I believe it was Senator Schumer yesterday saying this is transformational for the area. It is going to bring people to the area. We talk about 50,000 jobs maybe when you talk about direct and indirect jobs. So a big day for sure. We'll have to see exactly how long President Biden takes to the podium and what he has to say exactly, but he will obviously be talking about the federal funding that's coming here to Clay.
Ryan, thank you very much. We're expecting when he's at the most to take a brief little tour of the most. There are obviously some exhibits set up there to support STEM and the Micron project, so he'll get a look at those. I know when he was at OCC in October of 2022, he took a little brief tour, looked at a model of what the mega fab would look like here in Clay, New York. And as Ryan said, we know that it's $6.1 billion from that CHIPS program going to Micron. Some of it will be divided up for the expansion in Boise, which they're getting one fab there. That's actually already under construction. The chip production there will begin in 2026. We don't know how the money will be split between Boise and here. You would have to expect with at least two of the chip production plants here, Clay would get bulk of the money. As you see the stairs come down, often those stairs come down. That is usually support personnel in the back of the plane, media members as well. Of course, the president himself usually gets off in the front of the plane. The other thing besides the funding that President Obama, yes, I covered President Obama many years ago, but President Biden will highlight here today is one of 4 new workforce hubs. Syracuse will be part of that. The upstate New York region will be one of those 4 new workforce hubs, along with Philadelphia, Milwaukee, also the state of Michigan as well, to really build upon the infrastructure here, to really carry it out between, say, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, the Utica area, Mohawk Valley, where they have some things, and also facilities that they have established in Albany, New York, and to try to build that and make that one sort of of almost Silicon Valley-like segment for building semiconductors here. So that is the plan there. Rachel Polanski's live out at the fairgrounds right now. Looks like the president will be coming down those smaller steps, Rachel, instead of the traditional larger steps from up on top. What are you seeing now as I'm guessing the motorcade is starting to get into place? Who can you see as we start to, looks like some Air Force members that will greet him as he comes down, and,
sure.
and who else is on the tarmac?
Yeah, that's right, Jeff. A lot of activity going on right now as the officials are starting to make their way coming down the plane. The motorcade has also just started pulling in here. We know that greeting the president will be Major General Denise Donnell, commander of New York Air National Guard, Colonel Brett Baddock, a deputy wing commander, Governor Schumer, and of course, County Executive McMahon. So we are just seeing everyone coming off Air Force One now as they get ready to greet the president. And as you can see, the motorcade is lining up. And we are just anxiously awaiting the president.
Rachel, thank you. That's kind of such anticipation when they do lower those stairs. You kind of are waiting to see the president emerge from there.
Right.
He had about just about an hour flight from Joint Base Andrews in Maryland, where he was, where he left at about 11:30. Did his daily briefing at the White House around 10 o'clock this morning. Hopped on, I believe, Marine One to get to Joint Base Andrews, where he boarded Air Force One to come up here. And then, as we have been saying, it is a fairly tight schedule here today. So he is scheduled to deliver those remarks at 2 o'clock at the most. And then at 3:30, he's supposed to be back at Hancock Field Air National Guard Base because he will be heading out of town, back boarding Air Force One there to head to JFK Airport, where he will arrive around 4:30. And then from JFK, he has a busy schedule. He will then head off to the Westchester County Airport. He has a private campaign event that is going on tonight. So his schedule will continue well into this evening. So this is just part of the day for the president. You can see the limousine there, guarded with the Secret Service members as they wait for the president to come down. I know when he came back in October of 2022, as Andrew had said, Mayor Walsh was there to greet him. I believe Mayor Walsh's wife was with him as well at the time. They got a brief few minutes with the president, very cordially greeting them, speaking with them. You'd imagine that's the same kind of thing that will be happening here. I believe that looks like, I would guess in the tan coat, is that Governor Hochul. I do see Ryan McMahon there as we start to zoom in a little bit, and they wait for President Biden to descend those stairs from Air Force One, where he will then get in the motorcade and head down to the most. I believe the way the schedule is at the most, that he will be doing some of his, let's call it meet and greeting, that little tour of the most beforehand. There will be some speakers at the most before him. I think County Executive McMahon, one of them, will be speaking ahead of time before the president gets up and delivers the good news about that $6.1 billion in funding. Kind of goes through that, details it. The CHIPS and Science Act that was passed just a few months before the Micron announcement back in 2022. It was over the summer. There was kind of a split along party lines, although there were about 24 people from the Republican Party that did vote for it. One of those, Congressman John Katko, from obviously representing Central New York here, understanding the significance of approving that project, that money that would likely potentially help lead Central New York to securing one of the semiconductor makers. We didn't know at the time that it would be Micron. We knew that they were out to a couple, highlighting White Pine Commerce Park as a great spot for one of these chip plants. Rachel, let's go back out to you. I know you're not too far from Air Force One. Describe for me what it's like. I was kind of talking to you that it's so impressive when you see Air Force One there and parked. I mean, what are your impressions of seeing it there as as we wait for President Biden to come down?
Sure. No, that's a really great question, Jeff. And this is actually the first time that I have seen Air Force One. And you're right, impressive is the word that comes to mind. It's unlike any typical plane that we typically fly on. Very impressive, very loud here too. It's hard to hear among us, and we're seeing now a lot of the dignitaries now standing, awaiting the president. Governor Hochul is here. Senator Schumer, we see standing next to County Executive Ryan McMahon, all kind of standing in a line, just getting ready to greet the president. You can tell the anticipation is definitely building here, as everyone is just waiting for, for him to come walk down those stairs.
Yeah, quite an impressive plane, no doubt, able to be refueled in midair. So Air Force One can essentially really has unlimited range. It can carry the president wherever the president needs to go. In this case, it was a relatively quick trip, just over an hour, I believe, in the air from Joint Base Andrews in Maryland up here to Hancock Field in Syracuse. Again, as we await the president, certainly see somebody there. I can't quite tell in the dark, and it does look like President Biden now coming out of the plane. You can see him descending the steps down there to be greeted by Governor Hochul, Onondaga County Executive Ryan McMahon right there, just kind of disappearing. President Biden behind the limousine that he will be carried in the motorcade down to the most right there, hoping very soon he'll make his way over. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer there as well. Obviously, those people we have talked about. Obviously, President Biden instrumental in that CHIPS and Science Act and all those billions. Syracuse, Micron, one of 7 big chip announcements right now so far. Probably about the last of the major ones. There will be little ones, but the county executive, the governor, the Senate Majority Leader, so instrumental in landing Micron with that CHIPS funding here in the town of Clay. And we have talked to so many people about how the spillover effect is. The project itself, grand, no doubt, thousands and tens of thousands of jobs over the next 20 years here. But the spillover effect of all those supply chain companies that they are working to bring here, the county executive, the mayor, Center State CEO, President and CEO Rob Simpson just on a visit to Taiwan, talking to supply chain companies who regularly and routinely supply Micron. They do that in Taiwan. They're trying to bring them here. Ryan Dean is still live for us, obviously, inside the most. Kind of can't go anywhere. Ryan, you have a really special guest, also a gentleman very instrumental in the CHIPS and Science Act to secure that funding that ultimately would be used to lure Micron here. Who do you have there?
That's right. Yeah, I have the former congressman here, John Katko, definitely instrumental in the CHIPS and Science Act here. We're going to see, obviously, President Biden here taking a victory lap a little bit, but this was truly a bipartisan effort to get this passed.
It really was from top to bottom, and we should be celebrating the fact that for once everybody put their swords down and realized from a national security standpoint, we need to bring chip manufacturing back home. And from an economic standpoint, this is gigantic for Central New York. And everybody from the president to the governor to Ryan McMahon and Ben Walsh and everybody in between, everybody deserves credit for this. And who cares what party they're in? This is a celebration of what good part of politics. Sometimes good things can happen when you put the swords down. And we did on this one, and it's going to have a huge long-term benefits for Central New York.
As we wait for the president to get off Air Force One, he'll be here, obviously, to deliver remarks. What are you thinking he's going to say to this crowd here at the most?
I think a lot of what I just said. I mean, it's just about national security, because we can't have all our high-end chip manufacturing overseas when chips are such an integral component of almost everything we do and use in America today, and for weapon systems as well. So you can't have them all in Taiwan. God forbid China goes in there, we're in big trouble. So bringing it back home is a national security thing, but also the economic impact for Central New York. People got to digest this. $100 billion. That is crazy. And it's the biggest thing to hit Central New York, I think, since the Erie Canal. And it's going to have a similar impact. I think it's going to be wonderful for this area. I mean, I grew up here, and saw the manufacturing leave, and one of the reasons I went to Congress to try and help turn that around, and this is going to help turn that around. And I think Micron's coming, but there's going to be a lot of other people and companies come here to augment what they're going to do, and that's phenomenal for Central New York.
Senator Schumer said the same thing yesterday. He said people were leaving Syracuse, obviously after care, huge blow to this area, and now people will be coming to Syracuse.
I mean, think about this. When I was a kid, there was 40 some odd congressional districts. We're down to 26. The economic drain and the human drain, people leaving New York for better futures, this might turn it around. I mean, and New York State is finally wanting to become competitive economically with the Texases of the world and Ohio and the others who for decades have attracted manufacturing. Now we're going to do it, and we're going to have our part, and we're going to do a good job for everybody. That's awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. All right, Jeff, send it back to you.
Ryan, thanks very much. The retired Congressman John Katko speaking so well on the Chips and Science Act and the importance of why that was passed in Congress to bring those chips back here to be made in America. The retired congressman now doing some work, consulting with Micron. Obviously a good link between them and Central New York. The congressman knows it very well. He knows a lot of the players here as well. What a special moment for the Onondaga County executive, the governor, the Senate Majority Leader, who I'm sure has more dealings than most people with the president, but just still so special a day to be able to deliver what will be generational news. This will absolutely take years to build. They think by the time they build out all 4 chip fabs here, it'll be 20 years from now, and tens and thousands of jobs. We heard the Onondaga County executive say, even though Micron isn't actually physically doing anything, there's a lot going on right now. There are environmental reviews. There are sampling out at that site in Clay at White Pine Commerce Park. We also know that very soon, the county executive had told us earlier this week that Micron will begin forming that construction team that will start building things. I believe he said spring, early summer, they'll start to build that out. They've already put out ads to try to attract 20 different people to help build that out. As we start to see, the president is now in his limousine, is in the motorcade as that leaves now. And as I mentioned, there are just so many vehicles that are part of that motorcade there. From what we understand, I don't know specifically which one. If anybody knows, they can tell me. But News Channel 9's Andrew Donovan in one of the vehicles. I can guarantee you he's not in the limo with the president, but he is in one of those vehicles that is going by as part of the motorcade there. Pretty special moment as it makes its way down to the Most in downtown Syracuse. We've talked a lot about Micron and chips, memory chips. What do they build? Specifically, if you're into that kind of tech, they build what's called DRAM. That's the industry term for it. What is it used for, and why is it so important? They use it in everything from artificial intelligence, computers, smartphones, cars. There are a lot of chips that go into your cars, kitchen, laundry appliances, so many things that these kinds of chips that Micron makes. And different companies make different things. So Intel might make a little bit of a different chip, a logic chip that does a little bit of a different thing. So you say, well, other companies are getting funding from this CHIPS Act. Yes, they build different kinds of chips. Micron's, again, specific to those types of things that I just detailed for you there. So now that Air Force One is on the ground, the president in his motorcade, in his limousine, what we're going to do is we're probably going to wrap for now. We will certainly pick our coverage back up again as the president gets closer to downtown Syracuse. So please stay with us or nearby and check back with us. We'll be coming back on the air live as President Biden gets close to the Most in downtown Syracuse, where he will deliver his address. Thanks for joining us for now. We'll see you very soon.